Hello class, and welcome again to another lesson 12 of JavaScript. And in our previous lesson we have looked at the concept of JavaScript functions. We have taken a practical example in our code to demonstrate the concept of creating functions and calling the functions and how to return a value from a function. In this particular lesson, we want to focus on JavaScript objects. So the objective of this lesson is to understand what is an object and to understand how to declare and initialize an object, and 3, to understand how to access the object properties. With that said, let's get started. So JavaScript is one of the object-oriented programming languages, and what that means is that when you are designing your program using JavaScript, you're going to design and model your program using the concept of objects. And what is an object in this case? An object is a real-world entity for which the data is being represented. Let's take an example. You are designing a learning management system, and in that your learning management system, you're going to store some information about students. You are also going to store some information about the courses and as well as the instructors and so on and so forth. So if you look at those nouns that we've just pronounced, the students, the courses, the instructors and so on, you could see that this will form the objects, and each one of those objects has got some characteristics or data about which we want to store. For example, a student will have a student name, admission number, date of birth, gender. All those information about the student form the properties of that student. So we can say an object has properties, and these properties are listed as a key value pair. As you can see in this example, we have this line of code right here, and this line of code initializes an object called person, and this person object has many properties or many data about it, and some of this example could be a first name. The first name in this case is the property. John becomes the value of that property. Another property is the last name. The last name, we have the value which is do, and then another property is the age and the eye color. So these are the information about that particular object. So if you pick one object at a random, that object will have data, and that data is modeled using the concept of objects, and objects are written in form of a key value. So in this case, the properties are written in form of a key value pairs. So in this case, the first name becomes the key, John becomes the value of that property. So that is how you can declare an object within your JavaScript code. Object properties can be accessed using the property name, using the object name dot the property. So without a further ado, let us get started and take a practical example in our code on how we can create a simple JavaScript object and how we can access the properties of that particular object. So I'm going to turn over to my Visual Studio Code, and now right here below this function, I'm going to declare an object, and objects are declared mostly using the constant keyword, the const keyword. You remember the concept of variables, where we declare variables using const keyword. So I'm going to declare a variable and call it student, and this student is going to hold a student object. And how do we declare objects? We declare objects in JavaScript using the curly braces, and then within the curly braces we provide the properties or the data about that object in form of a key value pair. So we could say the first information about the student is maybe the name, and maybe the student name is John, The other property could be gender, and maybe we say the gender is male. The other property could be age, and maybe we say the age is a number 25. And the other property could be phone number of that student, and it could be 07, so on. So if you look at this this line of code on line 17, we have created a simple JavaScript object called student. And this object now has 4 properties: name, gender, age, and phone. Each of the property comes with a value: John, male, 25, and 07, which is the phone number. So we could say this object has 4 properties. Now, after declaring an object, how can we access the object property? Suppose now we want to print this object to be displayed on the screen or on the console. We can say console.log, and we are going to log the student object. So when I log student object, and now let me run this program. So I'm going to say node, and then the name of the file that contains the course, the page, the code, and then press enter. So you're going to see now this object is locked on the screen here exactly the same way we have declared it right here. Okay, so that is one way we can print the object on the screen. Another way, let me remove this function now to avoid confusion, and now clear. Let me type the command clear. So when you run this program, you only get the object the way we have declared. But we can also access a particular property of that object. Let's say we only want to print the name of that object. So to print the name, we're going to use the object name, which is student, dot the property name that we want to access. So in our case, we want to access the name property. So we're going to say student dot name, and that will only print the name of that student. So when we run the program again, you're going to see on your console here, the name has been logged instead of the whole object. With this syntax of object.value.property name, we can access any object property we want. So we can also log the phone number, and now we say .phone. Now when we run the program again, we have the phone. We can only access the phone number. So that's what it means on this line, to access object properties. So object properties can be accessed using the syntax below, which is the object name dot the property name. Or alternatively, you can use this syntax, object name, and then square brackets, then the property name within quotation. So we can come here, instead of using dot, we can have object, then square brackets, and then we are going to say phone. And now let me run again, and again we access the phone number. So if we put gender here, now we are going to have the gender, male. The other syntax of accessing the object values, so assuming we want to access all the object values, so what we can do, we can come and say console.log, and then we are going to use this syntax right here, object.values, and then we provide the object name. So in our code, we are going to say log object. Object is a keyword from JavaScript. Dot, it has a method called values, and what this method does, it only prints the values of that object. So when we provide the object within that method, so the object name is student, and now let's print this. May run the program again, and you're going to see that we have been only able to print the object values within an array, within a square brackets. So we are only accessing this value and this value and this value and this particular value here, and then we put these values within the square brackets and print it out. So this is what this method does by accessing the object value. So we can say this code is accessing object values. All right, so that's all about the concept of objects, and this concept is very important, as we shall see in our future lessons, where we will represent our system information in form of objects, and this concept of objects now becomes very important to you. And also note that the data within the object could be strings, could be integers, it could be boolean, and any form of data type that we have already looked in JavaScript. So as you can see in this object, we have the string as a name, the gender is also a string, the age is a number, and the phone number is a string. So it can carry any form of data. Alright, so with that concept said, I want to pause this lesson right here, and then in our next lesson we will look at the concept of JavaScript arrays. Otherwise, thank you for joining this lesson, and see you in our next class.